Good morning. It's Thursday morning, and here we are with Colossians 1, verse 15 through verse 20. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. Well, certainly Paul emphasizes here that Jesus Christ is first in everything he can think of. But we're going to crawl through this rather slowly, and it might take a couple days, so buckle up your boots. First, he's the image of the invisible God. God is invisible. We can't see God. We don't know where God is. We can't identify God's location or space or anything else. But Christ is the icon of God. So we look at Christ and we see this icon. Now, what is an icon? You might think of an icon, well, as a computer thing that you use, and that's modern meaning of the word. If you're a little more interested in history, you might know icons. It's these weird pictures that they have in Greek Orthodox churches, Russian or any Orthodox church. They have these weird-looking pictures with gold backgrounds, and they're not very representational. And we go, what are those things? They're icons, and an icon is a window into a spiritual realm, and so. The Greeks and Russians look at an icon and see not simply a picture, but they see the saint and the meaning of the stories. John the Baptist or Mary or Jesus or whoever it is. They see all those stories. So he's the icon of the invisible God. So we don't know, we can't see God, but we can see Jesus. And so he is the image, the icon, the representation, the presence of God in our world. So that's the first thing that's said, and it's quite a lot to say about that, actually. And then it says he's the firstborn of all creation. So he's the very first person created. Now, you need to be careful here because we might get into some Arianism and say, well, the Christ the Son was created and not, there was a time when he was not, before he was created, and that's all kind of theological nonsense the church has decided over the centuries. But the point here is that he's first, and by him, through him, everything in heaven and on earth, visible or invisible, is created. So anything that is, he was a part of its creation. Now we think of creation as, well, God was up there somewhere and floating in space, and God said, let there be light. And poof, there was light. And then God said, let there be planets and stars and, goldfish and hummingbirds, and all these things just happened. So God created the world by the power of his word, we sometimes say. Well, who is the word of God? It's Jesus. And so the word that God spoke is somehow related to the Son, and the Son is the one who in creation assists the Father, helps the Father, does it for the Father. I don't know what the language kind of fails there, but it happens through the Son, and everything that's created happens there, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. Now, the ancient world believed that there were all these levels of spirits above us, so to speak. And so, you had to placate all these different levels of spirits, and they all had authority over us in different ways, in different configurations, and different patterns and things, and we had to, sort of find our way among all these spiritual authorities, and then find a way to rise up into that realm of spiritual authorities and to the right realm. And so there's all this. There's some confusion in the early church actually about whether the God that Jesus called Father is the same God as the one of the Old Testament. And there were some who said, well, no, the Old Testament God was this kind of mean, warlike God, but he was, at this level, and Jesus, Abba, Father, was much higher, and so that's the God. And that's just all kind of Gnostic confusion, trying to confuse Gnosticism and Christianity. There's still some of that in our world, but it's much more subtle. Anyway, we could ask, what are the thrones, dominions, powers, and authorities that rule over us? Things like the political realm, the military-industrial complex, the commercial world and advertising, all of that. We have to sort of live through and live with all of that stuff that happens and affects us and influences us all the time. And so all of those things are subservient to and finally lesser than Jesus Christ. So he is very high and exalted. He's not just a guy in the first century, but he's the one who created the world. And that's where we're going to stop today. We're going to pick up that. We've only done about a verse here, 2 verses. We're going to pick up with verse 17 tomorrow, and keep rolling. So you'll see some more of what this passage says, probably tomorrow and Saturday before we get to the end of it. So see you then. Have a great Thursday.